Hello, mighty companion. This is Earl Purdy, and I want to welcome you to Hardcore Course in Miracles. Hardcore Course in Miracles. We're going to be talking about going from how do you go from wrong-mindedness to right-mindedness to one-mindedness, which is happy-mindedness. When do you do that? How do you do that? How do you do that? How do you do that? Well, that's what we're going to cover, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. But we're going to start out with our theme song to let us feel connected, to let us feel joined. Here we go, Brother John Christmas. Hello, 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 yeah. We're gonna get down right now, right now, right now, right now, right now, right now, right now.
There's a call for God, I see it everywhere. Everybody's running scared, and everything is turning upside down. But the words I hear, they keep coming through from deep inside of me and you. It's telling us that love is who I am. You and me were not that far apart. Yeah, we're beating the same heart. We've been together from the start. Tell me, can you hear it? Tell me, can you feel it? Put your arms around it and know that we are one. Yeah, yeah, we are one. Now let's come together and understand that love was born inside of every man. He's waiting for us to choose him as ourselves. When you choose love, you know you choose me too. And everyone becomes a part of you. And then you will know that love is who I am.
And who you are.
You and me were not that far apart. Yeah, we're beating the same heart. We've been together from the start. Tell me, can you hear it? Tell me, can you feel it? Put your arms around it and know that we are one. Yeah, yeah, we are one. Oh, we are one.
I want to welcome you to a Hardcore Course in Miracles. I'm Earl Purdy, and we're going to talk about how do you go from wrong-mindedness to right-mindedness to one-mindedness, which is love-mindedness. This is Hardcore, A Course in Miracles. I'm so happy to be here with you on Facebook Live, and that ain't no jive. So get ready to dive in. We're going to be on page 59 in the text, A Course in Miracles text, Foundation for Inner Peace version.
Not that far apart. Yeah, we're beating the same heart. We've been together from the start. Tell Tell me, can you hear it? Tell me, can you feel it? Put your arms around it. Know that we are one. Oh, 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 we are one. Yeah, yeah, we are one. Oh, oh, we are one. I am you, and you are me.
That's Brother John Christmas at johnchristmas.com. And that's where you can get that music. That's where you can get the music. Okay, we're getting ready to go deep. I'm going to dive right in. It's me and you. It's me and you. I'm going to give you the rules. I'm going to give you the guidelines for the Course in Miracles. Remember only this. Just remember that you need not believe the ideas. You need not believe the ideas. You don't need to believe the ideas. You need not believe the ideas. You need not accept 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 the ideas. You need not even welcome the ideas. You don't have to even welcome the ideas. You need not welcome the ideas. Some of the ideas, you may actively resist some of the ideas. What is it that you might do to some of these ideas? And with some of these ideas, you may resist some of these ideas. You may resist some of these ideas. You just might resist some of these ideas. Do you know that some of the ideas you will find hard to believe? Some of these ideas you will find hard to believe. Hard to believe. I may say some things that's hard to believe. I may say some things from A Course in Miracles that's hard for you to believe. You may hear something that's hard for you to believe. Some of the things I say to you might startle you. There may be something I say that startles you. There may be something that I say from A Course in Miracles that startles you. That startles you. Do you know that you are not asked to judge the ideas at all? You're not being asked to judge and analyze the ideas at all. You're not being asked to judge and analyze the ideas at all. Their use will give the ideas meaning to you and will show you that the ideas are true. You have to use the ideas. You have to use these ideas in order to experience the truth of these ideas. It's the use of the ideas. It's the use of the ideas that will give the ideas meaning to you. And it's the use of these ideas that will show you that the ideas are true. The ideas that I'm about to tell you, the ideas are true. If you use the ideas, you will see that they are true. If you use the ideas. So we're going to be on page 59. We're going to be on paragraph 10. In chapter 4, section 2, paragraph 10. In A Course in Miracles. The Foundation for Inner Peace version, the text, on page 59. 59. Now, we know the Course in Miracles is like cheesecake. You have to nibble it. So I'm not concerned with how many paragraphs that we cover. I'm the divine repetition teacher. I'm the remembering coach. In my 41 years of teaching and learning A Course in Miracles, if there's one thing I could tell you to save you some time. Stop trying to analyze the Course in Miracles and try to remember what it's saying. Try to remember what the Course in Miracles is saying. I'll say it again. Try to remember what the Course in Miracles is saying. I'm the remembering coach. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Look at the very first sentence in chapter 4, section 2, paragraph 10 on page 59. We're going to nibble this. This is one sentence. Salvation is nothing. Salvation, do you know that salvation is nothing more than right-mindedness? Stop. Salvation is right-mindedness. So does that mean whenever you hear the word salvation in A Course in Miracles, do you mean that, Earl, that every time I hear the word salvation, then what I should understand is that the Course in Miracles is saying right-mindedness. So salvation from a Course in Miracles perspective means right-mindedness, that me having a right mind, me thinking correctly, that's salvation. That's your salvation. So salvation is right-mindedness. Peace and happiness comes from right-mindedness. Then it says, which is not the one-mindedness of the Holy Spirit. So right-mindedness is not one-mindedness. So one-mindedness is not right-mindedness, the right-mindedness of the Holy Spirit. So what is the right-mindedness of the Holy Spirit? The right-mindedness of a loving mind. The Course in Miracles says you have the Holy Spirit in you. You have a loving right mind in you. You have a part of you that is in touch with the Creator, that also sees the experience that you think you're having. So right-mindedness of the Holy Spirit is the right-mindedness of a completely loving mind. Salvation is right-mindedness, but right-mindedness must be achieved before one-mindedness is restored. So how do you get back to one-mindedness? You have to achieve right-mindedness. You have to have a right mind before you can have one-mindedness. So does that mean that right-mindedness leads to the next step? Yeah. If you have right-mindedness, it's going to lead you to the next step, which is what? One-mindedness. The Course in Miracles says automatically. So if you start to see things correctly, you're going to automatically begin to move toward one-mindedness, love-mindedness, truth-mindedness. Truth-mindedness comes after right-mindedness. So the Course in Miracles, what is it teaching you? The Course in Miracles is teaching you the difference between right-mindedness and wrong-mindedness. The Course in Miracles teaches you the difference between right thinking and wrong thinking. So the Course in Miracles says you have to have right thinking before you can have one-mindedness, before you can have enlightenment, before you can know that you are joined and connected and one with everything and everybody. What is the requirement? The requirement is your thinking has to be correct. Your thinking has to be correct. And when your thinking is correct, it will automatically take you to love, will take you to one-mindedness, because right-mindedness, which is right perception, right-mindedness is right perception, right perception, right perception, right perception. Because right perception is what? It says right perception is uniformly without attack. So when you're looking at a right perception, when you're looking at a person that's right, this is a person that's not attacking. A right person and a right-minded person is a person that is not attacking others. A right-minded person is a person that's not attacking themselves. A right-minded person is a person that's not hurting others. A right-minded person is a person that's not hurting themselves either. So right-mindedness is without attack. Right-mindedness is without anger. There is no anger in right-mindedness. There is no anger and guilt in right-mindedness. So how do you know when you're right-minded? You're not feeling guilty. How do you know when you're right-minded? You are not afraid. How do you know when you are right-minded? You are not seeing yourself as lacking or having any kind of lack. How do you know when you're right-minded? You don't see sickness in your perception. How do you know when you're right-minded? 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 When you're right-minded, you're not raising hell. When you're right-minded, you're not going off on anyone. When you're right-minded, you're not attacking anyone. So right perception is uniformly without attack. So when your mind is not going off, when your mind is not attacking, then the Course says Therefore, wrong-mindedness is obliterated. So right there, we've been told how to obliterate wrong-mindedness, which is the ego. Do you know that another term for wrong-mindedness is what? The ego. The ego. The ego is another term for wrong-mindedness. And according to the Course in Miracles, I don't know how to break it to you, but according to the Course in Miracles, you can be wrong. You can have wrong perception. You can have wrong ideas. You can just flat be wrong. Now, this is hardcore Course in Miracles, so I'm being straight up with you. The Course in Miracles says, yeah, you can be wrong. You can be wrong. You can make a mistake. You can be wrong. And whenever you are attacking, it's saying whenever you are attacking, whenever you're going off attacking, projecting, then you are experiencing and you are coming from what, boys and girls? You're coming from wrong-mindedness. So how do you obliterate wrong-mindedness? It says it right there in the paragraph. Right perception is uniformly without attack. So whenever you are not angry and attacking, then the Course in Miracles says wrong-mindedness is obliterated. Because what is the wrong-mindedness? The wrong-mindedness is anger, attack, and projection. Now the ego, which is wrong-mindedness, the ego, the separate self, the you that thinks it's a body, the you that believes with all your heart that all you really are is a body, then you are the ego. You're coming from the ego. So the ego, which is the mind that has guilt and anger and fear and upset, the ego, which is wrong-mindedness, because I wouldn't have the anger, I wouldn't have the guilt, I wouldn't have the fear if I was right-minded. And so if I was right-minded, I wouldn't have any thoughts of attack in my mind. I wouldn't have any desire for attack in my mind. I wouldn't have any need for guilt in my mind. I would have no need for conflict and lack in my mind if I was right-mindedness, if I were right-minded. So it says, do you know the ego cannot survive? The ego can't survive. Your fear can't survive. Your guilt can't survive without judgment. So anger is coming from judgment. Your upset is coming from how you are judging the situation. Your upset with that person is really coming from how you are judging that person. It's not coming from what you think that person did or did not do. Your anger and upset, it's coming from your judgment. Wrong-mindedness comes from judgment. So without judgment, the ego is laid aside. Without judgment, without condemnation, without wrong-mindedness, without attack, the Course in Miracles says the ego can't survive without judgment and is what? Laid aside. So notice that the Course in Miracles didn't say that the ego was going to be destroyed. The Course in Miracles says the ego, your self-concept, who you think you are, it's not going to be destroyed. Who you think you are is not going to be destroyed. Who you think you are is not going to be destroyed by the truth. It's just going to be laid aside. It's going to be no longer your total focus and sense of identification. So the Course in Miracles says that when your mind, check this next sentence out. It says, the mind then has only one direction. The mind then, what is then? When you are no longer judging, when you're no longer in a talking attack and thinking attack and talking anger and thinking anger and projecting anger, the Course in Miracles says that's wrong-mindedness. So when you no longer want to attack, you will have right-mindedness. So you'll be operating from right-mindedness. The mind then has only one direction in which it can move. Because, see, the direction of your mind, do you know that the direction of your mind is always automatic? The direction that your thinking goes in is automatic. You call it your conditioning. You call it your habits. But really, the direction that you think is automatic. Haven't you noticed that? That you just automatically think certain ways? That you just automatically believe certain things are true? And that you just automatically believe certain things are not true? Have you noticed that the direction that your thinking goes in, that the direction that your mind goes in is automatic? So the Course in Miracles says, The reason why your mind has an automatic direction is because your mind can't but be dictated by the thought system to which it adheres. Listen to that. I'll say it again. Your mind is allowing itself to be dictated by the way that you think. The way that you think is dictating your mind. Or you could say, your mind has only one direction it can move in. And that direction that your mind is going to move in is automatic. That means that your mind can't but be dictated by the thought system to which it adheres. So whatever you think, whatever you believe, that's going to dictate your actions. Whatever you believe is going to dictate the way you think. And your mind is going to always go in the direction of the way you think. So your mind is focused on the way you think. And the Course in Miracles says, it can't be emphasized too often. What is it that we can't emphasize too often? We can't emphasize too often that correcting perception. Do you know that correcting your perception? Do you know that correcting the way that you see things is just a temporary expedient? Correcting your way of thinking is just a temporary answer. Correcting your way of thinking is a temporary expedient. It's a temporary answer. And it can't be emphasized too often. That correcting your interpretation, the Course in Miracles says perception is interpretation. So you could say correcting interpretation. Instead of saying correcting perception, you could say correcting interpretation. So correcting your interpretation is a temporary answer. So we are correcting your interpretation. Let me give you an example of correcting your interpretation. If you think right-mindedness is anger, projection, blame, attack, and guilt, then your perception needs correcting. Your perception is wrong. So the Course in Miracles says, so your perception needs to be corrected, but that's just going to be a temporary expedient. So why is correcting your perception? Why is correcting your way of seeing things so important? Why is it that correcting your interpretation of things in your life is so important? He says it's because misperception is a block to knowledge. Misperception is a block to knowledge. Incorrect perception blocks your knowledge. The reason why people don't really know anything and don't really know everything is because people are blocking knowledge. When you block knowledge, what happens? When you block knowledge, what are you doing? Whenever you are misperceiving, you are blocking knowledge. And what is misperceiving? What did it say earlier? It said misperception would be a perception that includes anger and attack. So the Course in Miracles says right perception is a perception without attack. So when you have a perception that's full of anger and guilt and grievances and attack, then it says misperception is a block to knowledge. Misperception is a block to knowledge. What is misperception? A perception full of anger and attack. So what does that mean, Earl? It means when you're angry and upset, that's when you have blocked knowledge. That's when you have forgotten the truth. So it's no such thing as being angry and upset and seeing things correctly. If you are seeing something correctly, even up to and including the death or transition of someone, if you're seeing it correctly, you won't be full of anger and attack. You won't be ultimately full of sadness. But we don't need to start at that extreme level. So don't go to the hardest thing for you to believe and understand. Don't start there, okay? Let's just keep the simplicity of this going. If you want to have right-mindedness, which you have to have before you can have God-mindedness and one-mindedness, the first thing that you have to remember is what? That right perception doesn't have any kind of attack in it. And that if your perception has a lot of anger and attack and fear in it, the Course in Miracles calls that wrong-mindedness. Wrong-mindedness is what the ego is. The ego is wrong-mindedness, wrong thinking. So when you're around people and they're thinking with a lot of anger and guilt and attack and separation, you are around a person who is wrong-minded. Okay? That's how you can tell the person is wrong-minded. Their conversation, their communication is not rooted in love. So when you're talking to somebody and their conversation is not rooted in love, rooted in peace, rooted in a sense of abundance, when you're talking to somebody and their conversation that is not rooted in any kind of forgiveness, don't you know that you're talking to an ego? You're talking to someone who is wrong-minded. That person is wrong, according to A Course in Miracles, which you don't have to believe except to welcome. I told you that some of the things I say you might find hard to believe, might startle you. Then the next thing that the Course in Miracles told us was that your mind is always going to go in the direction of your thinking. So your mind is focused on what you think. Your mind is always focused on what you think. All day long, your mind is focused on what you think. The Course in Miracles says your mind is going to automatically go in the direction of what you think and what you believe. So that's why what you think and what you believe is so important. Then it says, Course in Miracles says, it cannot be emphasized too often that correcting perception is merely a temporary expedient. But you have to have correct perception. You need to get correct perception. It says it's necessary only because misperception is a block to knowledge. Misperception is a block to knowledge. But guess what? Accurate perception is a stepping stone toward what? Accurate perception is a stepping stone toward knowledge. So whenever you have accurate perception, you are getting closer and closer to the point that you will really know what's going on. Don't you really want to know and have absolute certainty about what's really true? Don't you want to have knowledge? Don't you want to have knowledge of what's really real and what's really true? Well, in order to move in that direction, you have to have what the Course in Miracles calls accurate perception. So what is accurate perception? Accurate perception, it said earlier, was a perception that was without attack. That's why you don't have to analyze the Course in Miracles. It's right there in front of your face. Everything that it's saying is just saying it the way it says it, but you might not want to agree with that interpretation, but there it is right there. It says accurate perception is a stepping stone towards knowledge, but misperception is a block to knowledge. So misperception is a perception full of anger, guilt, grievances, and attack. So would that mean that every time a person has a lot of anger, guilt, grievances, and attack, that they are misperceiving, which means they're ignorant of what's really going on? In that moment, they're ignorant of the truth. When they're full of anger and upset and grievances, that means that you have a block. And in your thinking is blocking love. Your thinking is blocking knowledge. When? When it's full of anger, guilt, grievances, and attack. The next sentence says, the whole value. What is the whole value of right perception? What is the true value of having a right interpretation? What is the true value of having right perception? Well, he says the whole value of right perception lies in the inevitable realization. What is the inevitable realization? Well, one day you're going to have the ultimate realization that all perception is unnecessary. Ultimately, you're going to recognize that all interpretation is unnecessary. Perception is judgment. Perception is interpretation. Perception is interpretation. Like right now, if you are looking at me, then your interpretation could be that I am a body, that I am a person of color, a black male, even a spiritual being. That still would be what? That would be your perception of me. That would be your interpretation of me. So what are you always seeing? You're always seeing your interpretations all day long. All day long, you are seeing your interpretations. That's what a perception is. It's a judgment. It's an interpretation. All you're responding to is your interpretations. All day long, all you are responding to is your interpretations. All day long, all night long, all the time, 24 hours a day, whether you are asleep or whether you are awake, you're interpreting. You're interpreting your dreams, and you're also interpreting your day-to-day physical experience. Perception is interpretation. Perception is a judgment. Perception is interpretation. Perception is an interpretation. It is not a direct view. It is an interpretation. You're interpreting what I'm saying right now. You are interpreting what I'm saying right now. You may not realize it, but you're interpreting what I am saying right now. What I'm saying to you and what you're hearing is what? Your interpretation, your perception. You're always responding to your perceptions. You're always responding to your perceptions. That's why one day you're going to realize that perception is unnecessary. It's not going to be necessary for you to interpret or to judge or to figure out, because you're going to have knowledge. And when you have absolute certainty, which is what the Course in Miracles says knowledge is, it's absolute certainty. So when the Course in Miracles says it's necessary only because misperception, wrong perception, angry perception, fearful perception is a block to knowledge, it's a block to having absolute certainty. And accurate perception, accurate interpretation, accurate perception. What is accurate perception? What is accurate perception? Accurate perception is a stepping stone. Accurate perception is a stepping stone towards what? Knowledge. Being certain. Knowing you're abundant. Knowing who you really are. So what removes the block? What removes the block? Right perception. The whole value of right perception lies in the inevitable realization that all judgment is ultimately unnecessary. Interpretation will be unnecessary. Perception is interpretation. One day, you won't need to figure things out. You won't need to figure things out. You won't need to figure things out. You won't need to judge and evaluate. You will just know. You will have absolute certainty. You will know what's true. You will know absolute certainty. So right perception, correct interpretation removes all your blocks to knowledge. If you want to get rid of your blocks to knowing, if you want to get rid of your blocks to freedom, if you want to get rid of your blocks to God, all you need is right perception. All you need is right perception. And you know, how do you know when you're out of right perception? How do you know when you're misperceiving? You know, how do you know? What are you wanting to do? When your perception is incorrect, what you're going to want to do is kick some butt. You're going to be angry. You're going to want to attack, or you may feel guilty, or you may feel a lot of conflict. When that's happening, you are in wrong-mindedness. That's how you know when your thinking is wrong. That's how you know when your thinking is wrong. You are full of anger and attack and fear and insecurity and jealousy. The Course says this is a block to knowledge. So, not having perception, all perception being unnecessary. The Course in Miracles says, you may ask how being in the world without perception is possible. How can I be in this world without perception? How can I be in this world without interpretation? See, sometimes when you hear the word, when you hear the statement, how can I be in the world without perception? Do you know you might be tempted to almost look at that as if, how can you be in the world without physical senses? Did some of you do that? Like when you hear about all perception is unnecessary, and you hear a statement like, all perception is unnecessary, then it's like you feel like you will not be experiencing anything. It's almost like a void or a blank. Did any of you have that experience that's listening to me, watching me? So you may ask, how is it possible to be in this world without perception? As long as you appear to be living in this world, how can you be in this world without perception? That's a reasonable question. What is a reasonable question? How can I be in this world without perception? How can I be in this world without judgment and interpretation? That's a reasonable question. But there's something you must be careful about. So you must be careful, however, that you really understand the question. You must be careful, however, that you really understand the question. How can you be without perception as long as you're living in this world? How could you be without perception and judgment? That's a reasonable question. But you got to be careful that you really understand the question. And here's a question I have for you. The question that I have for you is, who is the you who is living in this world? Who is the you that's watching me right now? Who is the you that's listening to me right now? Who is the you who's living in this world? Who is the you that's living in the place where you're living right now? Who is the you that's living in the city or the place that you're living in right now? Who is the you that's living in this world? Who is the you? See, who is the me? Who is this me that seems to be living in this world? Who is this me called Earl Purdy? Who is this me that seems to be living in this world? Because according to this, you are immortal. Spirit is immortal. Spirit is immortal. What does that mean? Well, it means that you are spirit, you are spirit, you are spirit. Spirit am I. There's a workbook lesson that starts out, Spirit am I. So let's get this straight. And I'm going to repeat this for a minute because it'll take a minute probably to really be heard. Okay? You are a spiritual being. You are a spiritual being. Your real nature is that of an unlimited spiritual being. You've forgotten that. You have forgotten that you are immortal. You are immortal. You are immortal. That means you are constant. That you are a constant state. You are a constant being. You are constant. You never end. You are constant. Being spirit, saying I am spirit, is the same as saying I am constant. I am a constant state. I am a constant state. I am spirit. I am immortal. Immortality is a constant state. So what does that mean? It means that you are not a body. 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 You have a body. You have a body. The body is a communication device. The body is a communication device. The body is a communication device. I am using my body to communicate with you right now. I am using my body to communicate, to join. I'm using this body to join minds with you, I'm using this body. This body is a medium of communication. The physical body is a medium of communication. The physical body is a way to join thoughts, is a way to join minds. You join minds through the physical body. You use the physical body to join minds. You use the physical body to join minds. You use the physical body to join minds. You don't use the physical body just to join physical bodies. That's not a sin. Don't misperceive me. Don't misperceive what I'm saying. But a misperception is using the physical body just to join physical body, because the mind isn't involved. And if the mind and the heart is not involved, then what you are doing with the body is meaningless, and it doesn't really mean anything. It's not sinful, it's not bad, it just doesn't mean anything. You're just not doing anything that really has any real effect on anything real. When it's all about the body and only about the body, and you leave the mind and the spirit out, you're not really doing anything. So you don't need to feel guilty about what you do with your body, with anybody else's body. If you don't care anything about them, then you really just aren't, y'all just getting together not to really do anything. So you might do anything really good. And you might do what's not anything several times a week, So, it doesn't really make any difference. If you're doing something with the body, but you're not using the body to join minds, and you're not using the body to join hearts, then you're not doing anything sinful with the body. You're not doing anything. Sex isn't anything bad or sinful if that's all that the person is focusing on. They're just not doing anything. They're just doing a whole lot of nothing. So, the Course in Miracles says, spirit is an immortal. Spirit is immortal. And immortality is a constant state. So who is the you that seems to be living in the world? Because the you that seems to be living in the world, it doesn't look like it's immortal. It looks like the you that's living in the world can die. It looks like the you that's living in the world can be hurt. It looks like the you that's living in the world its life can end. So it doesn't look like you are immortal. And so the Course in Miracles says you are an immortal being. You are spirit. You are constant. But so who is this you that's living in the world? Who is this you that's in the world? So when it says spirit is immortal, when the Course in Miracles says immortality is a constant state, that means that it's just as true now as it ever was, that you are spirit now, that you will always be spirit, which means that spirit implies no change at all. So spirit implies no change at all. Spirit is another way of saying I am something that does not change at all. So you're right, you can't change. The Course in Miracles says don't even try to change, because you can't change. You are spirit, you are immortal, you are a constant state. You are true now, you will always be true. And who you really are never changes. You are innocent and you are lovable and you are loved. You are innocent and you are loving. You are innocent and you are lovable. You are immortal. You are spirit. You are constant. This is as true now as it will ever be, because it implies who you really are can never change. What you really are can never change. What you really are can never change. What you really are can never, ever, 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 ever change. You really can't change yourself. You can't change yourself. So what is it that you can change? You can change your perception of yourself. You can change your interpretation. You can change your perception. The only thing that you can change is your thinking. You can change your perception. You can change your interpretations, but you cannot change yourself. You are lovable. You're eternal. You're adorable. You are spirit. You are immortal, and you cannot change that. Can you forget that? Can you forget that you are spirit? Can you forget that you are more than a body? Of course you can forget. Think about how many things you forget in a day. So of course you can forget your spiritual identity. You forget where you leave your keys. You can forget where you left, your shoes. So you forgot where you left your soul. You forgot yourself. You can forget your keys and you can forget yourself. So the Course in Miracles says one big thing to keep in mind about knowledge. There's one thing that knowledge never does. So the Course in Miracles says that spirit is not a continuum. It's not a continuum. What does that mean? In other words, spirit is not a continuum. You don't really get to know spirit by comparing spirit to something else. What does that mean? What does that mean, Earl? Knowledge never involves comparisons. Knowledge does not involve comparing things. When you know, there's no need to compare. When you're absolutely certain about what's true and what's valuable, you are not comparing yourself to anything or anyone. Whenever you are comparing you are in the world of perception. So if you're going to compare, the Course in Miracles says that it's going to use comparison to your advantage. It's going to give you the opportunity to compare what it's like being with love and being with someone that's truly loving, and to have a true experience of love, and then to have an experience of what's not love. What's not a feeling of safety and recognition and appreciation. So in this plane that we're on right now, we learn through comparisons. We learn from contrast and comparison. Okay, this is what it's like being with this person over here, and what is it like being with this person over here? So I'm going to learn by comparison, and I'm going to learn by contrast. But knowledge, when you really know, when you're really in touch with your spirit and your true self, which you're going to be one day, then you will never be comparing anything. So it says, knowledge never involves comparisons. Knowledge never involves comparisons, because love never involves comparisons. Knowledge is love, love is knowledge, it's the same thing. So the Course in Miracles says knowledge never involves comparisons. That's its main difference between everything else that the mind can understand. So what's the main difference from everything else that the mind can understand? Just understand that knowledge never involves comparisons. Knowledge never involves comparisons. Wow. Okay, so when I go through a section in the Course in Miracles, and I know that the most important thing that I could possibly do is try to remember what it said, what I do is I highlight whatever the instructions were that the section gave me, because every section has some instructions, very specific things that we need to do. So if you went back to paragraph 10, where we started out, then what is one of the main things in that paragraph? What was one of the instructions that it told us? Well, it told us that right-mindedness will lead you to right-mindedness. Right-mindedness will lead you to one-mindedness. And then what did it tell us? It says, well, right perception is without attack. So a right perception is a peaceful perception. A right perception is a peaceful perception. A right perception is a peaceful perception. So does that mean when you feel fulfilled? Does that mean when you feel happy? Does that mean when you feel joyful? Does that mean that when you feel safe? Does that mean that when you feel free? Does that mean that when you feel abundant, you have right perception? That's exactly what it means. Right perception is a perception that's without sadness, depression, and lack. So when you're feeling anger and attack and depression and sickness, and you're perceiving upset, and you're not feeling good about yourself, that automatically is letting you know that you have what? That you are using wrong perception, that you are wrong. If you think you can't be happy, you can't be abundant, or that you can't be loved, and that doesn't make you feel good, then you have just told yourself something that is not true. That's what you're supposed to tell yourself. If you've been sad all day, you should be telling yourself, man, my perception has been wrong all day. I've had the wrong interpretation of this day. I have been upset, angry, and sad all day. So I know that this is a day that I did not see correctly. This is a day when I was telling myself something that wasn't true. That's the application of the ideas. Or on the other hand, if you found out today you felt really happy and peaceful, and you didn't attack anyone and no one attacked you, and you had a sense of connectedness and joy and peace, then you can assume that you have had right perception all day long. Because right perception feels good. Right perception makes you feel joyful and happy. And so that absolutely obliterates your ego. Happiness, not wanting to attack or hurt or harm or be harmed, or the Course in Miracles says the ego can't survive without judgment. So when you stop condemning yourself, your fear cannot survive. If you stop judging yourself, condemning yourself, then your unhappiness cannot survive. So if you want your unhappiness to survive, then you have to keep attacking and blaming and looking at yourself as a victim. Because if you do that, then that would allow your ego, your fear, your sense of separation to survive. But the Course in Miracles lets us know that without judgment, without condemning yourself, without seeing yourself as guilty, putting yourself down, your ego can't survive. So I'm going to do a review and a quick recap of the instructions that we were given. I'm a full-time teacher of A Course in Miracles. I do it on a donation basis. So I would like to ask you to make a donation. And if you'd like to do that, you could go to my website, Earl Purdy, P-U-R-D-Y, earlpurdy.com, earlpurdy.com, and you can make a donation there. Or you could also use Venmo, you could use the Cash App, or you could use PayPal, or you could use Zelle. All you need is my email address, and my email address is earlpurdy@earlpurdy.com. earlpurdy@earlpurdy.com. I'm also available for one-on-one sessions with me, where I take my over 40 years experience of teaching and learning and working with people with the Course in Miracles, and I could show you how to apply the principles of the Course in Miracles to anything that you're going through in your life right now. I can tell you exactly what the Course in Miracles, and where in the Course in Miracles it addresses those issues and how to handle them and how to have those issues resolved. So if you know you have some issues that you need to get resolved, then have a clarity session with me, and I'll take you right to where the Course in Miracles handles that and show you how to practically apply it in your experience. And if you're open and receptive to it, I'm also a soul purpose astrologer and numerologist, for those who are also open to that. If you want to have a clarity session with me, just go to my website, earlpurdy.com. Look under the Clarity Session tab, and you will get the details about my services. And you can self-book an appointment with me right from my website. Also, on Sundays at 1 p.m., every Sunday at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, on the Earl Purdy page on Facebook, the Earl Purdy page on Facebook, I do another Course in Miracles Facebook Live. And also, it's at 1555 Race Street in Denver. And so if you're in the area, you can come and join me in person at 1555 Race Street. On Thursdays, we do Hardcore Course in Miracles at 7 p.m. Mountain Time on Facebook Live on the Earl Purdy page. And that's what we were doing this evening. And so I think that pretty much covers it, except to let you know that I have hundreds of classes on YouTube that you can watch, as well as on Facebook, and I have hundreds of audio and video classes on my website that you can watch and listen to at no charge. And I don't charge anyway. How am I charging it if I teach on a donation basis, right? So I want you to know that what we need to do right now is to remember. And I want to thank you. Thank you in advance. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. So what is it that we were told? We were also told, because I'm looking for the instructions in every paragraph. So the instruction in paragraph 10, chapter 4, section 2, paragraph 10, it says, the mind has one direction in which it can move, and that the movement of your mind is automatic. Your mind is going to automatically move toward the way of thinking that your mind believes in. So your mind is always going to go in the direction that you believe. Whatever it is that you think, that's the direction that your mind is going to go in. So that means whatever you're seeing is what you're thinking. Whatever you're seeing is what you are thinking. Whatever you are seeing is what you're thinking. That's what you're seeing. You're seeing what you think. Your mind automatically goes in direction of your thinking. There's just two kinds of thinking. There's just two kinds of thinking, right thinking and wrong thinking. And yes, it's good to say wrong thinking. And I'll tell you why. Do you want to know why it's good to call it wrong thinking? Because you've already been programmed. You've already been conditioned not to want to think wrongly. All your life, you've been taught it's best to think correctly and not wrongly. So your mind has already been trained to go in the direction that's opposite to thinking it's wrong, because the mind doesn't want to be wrong. So when you say to your mind, you know, it's wrong perception for me to see myself as broke and full of lack. It's wrong perception. I'm in wrong perception when I think of attacking someone and being angry and being attacked myself. When I'm depressed and when I'm sad, I'm doing wrong thinking. Do you know that when you say it that way, your mind is going to automatically want to correct that thinking, because your mind has been already conditioned and trained not to want to think wrongly. But if you tell yourself every way of thinking is the right way of thinking, well, your mind is not going to want to get rid of the right way of thinking. So if you think anger and attack and guilt is right thinking, then your mind is going to want to hold on to it. If you say anger and guilt as attack is wrong thinking, then your mind is going to automatically want to go in the direction of right thinking. So it can't be emphasized. It says right in the next paragraph, it says, it can't be emphasized too often that correcting perception is a temporary solution. So doing the Course in Miracles and doing what it says, or studying these truth books, and having your perception or interpretation corrected, the Course in Miracles says that that's just a temporary answer. That that you need your perception to be corrected. And why do you need to have your perception corrected? What it says, you need to have your perception corrected because incorrect perception or misperception is a block to knowledge. And you really need to know what's going on right now. If you're afraid and you're full of anxiety and depression and loneliness, then that means that you have a lot of misperceptions going on. And those misperceptions are blocking your knowledge. They're blocking your awareness of God. It's blocking your joy. So you want accurate perception. What do you want? You want accurate perception. And what did I say that the Course in Miracles says perception is? The Course in Miracles says perception is interpretation. So you need an accurate interpretation of your relationships. You need an accurate interpretation of God. You need an accurate interpretation of Jesus. You need an accurate interpretation of anything that you're still getting upset about. And the Course in Miracles says an accurate perception is a stepping stone towards knowing. And ultimately, you're going to see things so correctly that's going to be so in line with God and so in line with the truth that you won't really need to interpret it anymore, because you'll know what it is. If you know what something is, there's no need to interpret what it is. If you know what something is, there's no need to judge it, because you know. And when you judge, that means you don't know. That's why you're judging. But if you know, you don't judge. So you don't need perception when you have right perception. And that's a perception without attack in it. So the Course in Miracles says the other thing that we heard that we need to remember is that you need to ask yourself. The Course in Miracles gave very clear instruction. It said, you may ask how this is possible, being here without perception. How is that possible as long as you appear to be living in this world? As long as you appear to be living in this world, how can you not be seeing things and dealing with the things that you see? The Course in Miracles says that's a reasonable question, but you've got to be really careful to understand this question, because you are spirit. So who's the you that's living in this world? Who is the you that's walking around thinking it's a body and separate and that it lives and dies? The Course says, who is the you that's living here? You are spirit. And so it reminded us that you are spirit. You are spirit. That means what you really are, what you truly are, whether you remember it or not, whether you agree with me or not, has nothing to do with the truth of what I'm saying. So the truth of what I'm saying is you are an immortal being. Who you really are and what you really are is total love, and you do not die. Okay? You've forgotten that. You've forgotten who you really are. Now, what are you doing? Well, you think you are what you were taught you were. So now you think you're your body, probably, or you think you're your gender or your sex or your race. You probably even think that what you are exclusively is a human being. So who is this human being called you? Who are you? Because you are spirit. You are immortal. And what is the other thing that the Course told us about knowledge? It says knowledge never involves comparisons. So would you be in your ego when you're constantly comparing yourself to somebody else? Yes. So how do you use comparison? How were we told that we could use comparison to our advantage? Well, the Course in Miracles uses everything we made for our benefit. And that includes comparison and contrast. So you would know the difference between right thinking and wrong thinking. You got to compare them. You got to compare right thinking with wrong thinking, right-mindedness with wrong-mindedness. And remember, there are 3 steps. You go from wrong-mindedness, which is a mind that's full of thoughts of anger and attack and grievances and depression and fear and separation from God. And then you have right-mindedness. And right-mindedness is thinking that's full of love, full of joy, full of peace, that's not projecting, that's not blaming. Right perception is a perception that takes responsibility. Right-mindedness is a mind that takes responsibility for its perceptions. A right mind is a mind that takes responsibility for its interpretations. So you need to take responsibility for your perceptions, because it's your perceptions that you are responding to and not the situation or circumstance. It's your perception of your mate. It's your perception of your child that you're responding to. It's your perception of your job that you're responding to. It's your perception of religion, your perception of spirit, your perception of Jesus, your perception. You're responding to your perception. And there are not but 2 types of perception: right perception and wrong perception. Right perception and wrong perception. Right perception, right-mindedness, leads to one-mindedness. So you don't get to enlightenment, you don't get to God-mindedness until you have right perception. And right perception is a perception full of love. It's a perception full of joy. It's a perception full of knowledge. It's a perception full of truth. Mighty companions. So you've heard it. Listen to this at least 4 times. Walk, listen to this. Walk while listening to this. I don't know how that came out of me. But you just heard the key to happiness. The Course in Miracles just gave you the key to happiness. And I'm going to challenge you to see if you can listen to this and watch this enough to see that you were just given the way to go to one-mindedness, God-mindedness, spirit, peace, and knowledge, just in what we just heard. So I love you. I appreciate you. And you can have any type of perception you can think of, but it doesn't matter what kind of perception you can think of, even a maybe perception. You're either going to use that maybe perception in a peaceful way, or you're going to use that maybe perception in a way that causes you conflict. So it doesn't matter what the perception is. Just know that that perception is either going to be a right perception, which is going to be a perception that increases your peace, or you're going to have a wrong perception, which is a perception that's full of some type of fear and conflict. And when you're not clear, what you need to make is an undivided decision. And that undivided decision is going to be for one-mindedness, for God, for truth. Mighty companion, you all are awesome. This was a trip. I learned so much. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, all of you. You are my mighty companions. And I'm so glad I have the right perception of you, which is a perception of gratitude. That's what I feel. Grateful. Love you. May the Course be with you. I'm going to listen right now. May the Course be with you.